The hard problem of consciousness, which is why do physical processes produce subjective experience at all? Or as I said earlier, that no physical law or equation seems to entail that that system produces subjective experience. That to you comes from a false assumption, the assumption that phenomenal consciousness is absolute.
That's true.
So observer independent.
Exactly.
So then you say a system is supposed to be thought of relativistically. A system either lacks phenomenal consciousness or has it with respect to a cognitive frame of reference.
Exactly. Just this is correct. Just as with velocity, if we ask the two persons, one on the ground on a station and the other one on a train, and we ask them who is correct here, who is moving and who is stationary, it seems like that they contradict each other. The one will say, I'm the resting one. The other is the moving, right? But the other will say, no, I'm resting. But actually, it's fine because it's relativistic, right? It depends on the observer. So you can have opposite properties with relativity. Interestingly, this is exactly what we are stuck in when we think about consciousness with the explanatory gap. Because let's say that I try to find your phenomenal consciousness. I will not find it in your brain. I will only find neural patterns. So I will conclude that you're just a philosophical zombie. You don't have any consciousness at all. But I, of course, have consciousness. I have all those experiences. But then, of course, you will say the opposite. You have you have your own experiences, so you have consciousness, and you don't find my own consciousness when you look at my brain. So we have here again like a contradiction or opposite properties. But again, if we think about it from a relativistic point of view, then it makes sense. Because from my cognitive frame of reference, I measure that I have consciousness, but I cannot measure that you have consciousness. And from your cognitive frame of reference, which is different, you measure that you have consciousness, but I don't have consciousness, right? So all of a sudden, it makes it much more plausible. We can understand how can it be that we have this seemingly contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so this is the starting point of the argument, and we don't need to go to illusionism like Dennett did, for example. We don't need to go to illusionism anymore, because illusionism is to say that we privilege one kind of cognitive frame of reference. We privilege the third person frame of reference. But we don't need to do it anymore. Now we understand that with relativity, we understand that it's wrong to privilege one frame of reference. All frames are equivalent. It's just a matter of which frame you are in, and we can do transformation from one to the other.
All right, now we've set the stage, and I have a variety of questions.
Okay.
So firstly, let me see. From a first-person frame, a cognitive system observes that it has qualia, but from the third-person frame, you just see the neural substrate, so that's the easy problem. And that neither is more fundamental or privileged, as you said. So Angelina, who's on the platform, observes Brad on the train, and it's not that Brad has the true velocity and Angelina is truly at rest. It's that none is privileged. Okay, allow me to push on this relativity analogy. So in special relativity, there are certain transformations that you could do to compute precisely what everyone else will measure from where you are, from your own measurements. So there's a transformation there between the first person or the observer's frame and then the third person. But in yours, it's, as far as I understand, just a delta function or something like that. So same frame will give same measurements. It's the identity. It doesn't predict anything new. So I'm wondering, I could be wrong, what is the relativity in your framework actually doing here, besides serving as a metaphor?
The fact that you cannot measure from the outside that I have consciousness doesn't mean that we cannot calculate or we cannot do a transformation to my frame of reference, right? Exactly as Angelina doesn't measure that bread has that bread is stationary. Still, right? If we do the transformation from her frame of reference to his frame of reference, all of a sudden, because of this, the law how to do this transformation, we will see that now bread measures that he is stationary. Okay? Same thing happening here. I developed a transformation so we can start, let's say, from my cognitive frame of reference, where I measure that I have consciousness, but you don't. And then the rules of this transformation will preserve that when I do this transformation to your cognitive frame of reference, all of a sudden you will say, I have consciousness, or you will experience consciousness, but you will, when you try to find you will measure that I don't have consciousness, right? So this is exactly part of why relativity is so powerful. We can create those transformations from one frame to the other, and if those transformations are good enough, then we get exactly what you will measure, right? So it's and then again in my first paper, this is exactly what I try to show. Now, another thing about that in physics, in order to say that something is relative, or it means that, as we said before, when we take those two frames of reference, they are equivalent, so they have the same laws of nature. So it means that if I do a transformation from one frame to the other, same laws should exist. So the equations that describe these laws should be the same, right? We call it invariance. So the laws of physics should be invariant under transformation of under frames transformation, right? So this is exactly what I showed in my first paper, that I defined those cognitive frames of reference. I defined how to do the transformation between them and show that those transformations are invariant, and preserve preserve the equation, of this transformation actually. And then after the transformation, it will describe what you will measure and not what I will measure. Okay.
Sure. In special relativity, the transformation is a Lorentz transformation. What group or what transformation is it to transform between a cognitive structure and then a consciousness, first person structure, and then a third person physical structure?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Lorentz transformations are continuous transformations. It's a continuous group. And in my case, it's not. So it's over there, it's continuous group because it's about space and time, which are continuous. But here, it's not continuous anymore. It's a discrete group. Because now it's discrete, we move from one frame, cognitive frame, to another cognitive frame. So it's a discrete group. Now, over there, in Lorentz transformation is also, how do they call it, non-compact transformation. It means that you can reach infinity.
Mm-hmm.
It's the limit case when you go to the speed of light. Here, we don't have any, case of infinity or something like that. So it's much easier, let's call it, transformation. It's discrete, it's compact, and, it's abstract. It's much more abstract than, the group the Lorentz group. So the thing here is that I'm not familiar with any name that describe this kind of a group. It will be a good idea to ask mathematicians, to ask mathematicians that are specialized in group theory. Maybe they know which kind of group is it. But at least I know it's a group. And how can I know it's a group? Because in mathematics, in group theory, we have specific conditions in order to be a group. And my transformation meets those three conditions. So the first condition is a closure, that this transformation always creates a new frame of reference, a new cognitive frame, and you can always you always stay inside this system of cognitive frames of reference. And the second condition is that there must be an identity element. So like that if you use this element on the frame of reference, you stay on the same frame of reference. That's why it's an identity. And then the third condition is that you will have an inverse element. So, for example, let's say that I start with my cognitive frame of reference and do a transformation to your cognitive frame of reference. Now I can use the inverse element in order to go back, to the frame of reference that I started with. So again, I show how those three conditions are met with this transformation. That's why I know it's a group.
So there's a mapping between a first-person observable and a third-person one? And is there some invariant quantity that they'll all agree on? Like in special relativity, you have a space-time interval. Is there something else that they'll all agree on?
Yeah, not exactly. Notice that, so we used to think about relativity theory, Einstein relativity theory. So we used to think about, the need for some anchor, like the speed of light. But let's take Galilean relativity. Over there, we didn't have any anchor like the speed of light or something like that. So it's not part of the definition of the principle of relativity that we must have some kind of an anchor, something that is invariant all the time, like the speed of light. Maybe in the future we will find that there is something like that also with cognitive frames of reference. But for now, I didn't see it. You need to remember also that, so again, this paper, the first paper, was more about to show the plausibility of that, to show that the hard problem might not be so hard if we take into account the principle of relativity. Because then we can think, okay, now it's a bit like a coin. Now you have the head and the tail of a coin, and both of them are just two different sides of the same thing. And the same now with relativity and with cognitive frames of reference. So one side is when you measure my brain from the outside and you see neural patterns, and the other side is my first person point of view. But now the question is, how can we move on from to speak about plausibility and to actually show the mechanism, how it can work, how it works? Let me give you an example what I mean. Let's say, okay, two things here, two examples here. The first example, let's think about equivalence principle again. The astronaut from the outside of the spaceship and the astronaut inside the accelerating spaceship. And again, they have different measurements, right? And he will measure that she is accelerating, and she will measure that she has gravity, right? Now, reduction means if we will try like to explain her gravity from his a measurement of acceleration. Then we can say, oh, we did a reduction from gravity to acceleration. Now, of course, this is not the case. We don't need to do reduction here, right? Because it's just two different frames, and both of them are right, and there is no reduction here, right? We cannot do a reduction from head to tail. So we cannot do a reduction from her frame to his frame. Same with consciousness, we cannot do a reduction from me measuring I have consciousness to you measuring I don't have consciousness, from first person point of view or first person frame of reference to third person frame of reference. There is no reduction here, okay? So this is first thing that we need to notice here. The relativistic theory of consciousness is not a theory of like reductive materialism. There is no reduction here, okay? Just two sides of the same events, let's say.
Yeah, suppose it's true. These are two sides of the same. Now, on one side of the coin is what people would associate with physics, and on the other side is what people would associate with consciousness. Then why do you say that your theory is a physicalist theory of consciousness? If no side is to be privileged, then it doesn't seem to me that you could reduce it down to physics. That any argument you could make that would be reducing it down to physics, one could make to reduce it down to consciousness.
Right, excellent question. This is and the reason that it's such an excellent question is that this is exactly what I wanted to speak next. So, first of all, the short answer for your question is relationalism. I claim that consciousness is also a physical property, and it manifests just because of relations that we can measure from our own cognitive frame of reference. Those measurements, those relations are different than the one that you can do from the outside. And that's why there are different physical properties that are manifest here.
I'm confused as to why it's called a physical property. Why are you calling it a physical property and not something else ontologically, some other entity? So what's the difference here between a property and then just something else?
Okay. Another excellent question. So, if we take the principle of relativity serious enough to be a basic principle of reality, then all properties and all entities that we can see are just manifestations in a specific frame of reference. Like we saw before, gravity or acceleration and so on, right? So now we start from, not from entities, not from properties, we start from something else. We start from causal structures, from causality, actually. Something that cause change for another thing, like A changes B, right? This is causality for me. And now we have some causal chains. A changes B, B changes C, C changes D. We have those causal chains. And now different frames of reference will manifest those causal chains differently, according, to the relations that they can measure. So not all frames of reference can measure the same causal structures. One frame will measure a causal structure of a spaceship that is accelerating, right? Another frame of reference measure that she is actually stationary and she has gravity, okay? So properties and entities now is something very fluidic, if you like, it's like, it's relative now. It's all relational, okay? But all of those are part of physics now. And the claim is, so I'm a physicalist. But maybe it's a new kind of physicalist that say that physics, the basic principle of physics is the principle of relativity and relationalism. And with that, we can explain everything that we see, including consciousness. So consciousness now will be part of physics using relationalism, using relativity. Okay, we just need to show which kind of relations can create this physical property that we call consciousness or phenomenal properties.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. If you're hungry for deeper dives into physics, AI, consciousness, philosophy, along with my personal reflections, you'll find it all on my Substack. Subscribers get first access to new episodes, new posts as well, behind-the-scenes insights, and the chance to be a part of a thriving community of like-minded pilgrimers. By joining, you'll directly be supporting my work and helping keep these conversations at the cutting edge. So click the link on screen here, hit subscribe, and let's keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge together. Thank you and enjoy the show. Just so you know, if you're listening, it's CurtJaimungal.org, CurtJaimungal.org.